The clinking of crystal glasses, soft murmurs of old money, and the distant echo of a live string quartet filled the grand Tuscan-inspired vineyard estate as golden evening light spilled over silk tablecloths and champagne flutes. It was the kind of wedding you'd see in glossy lifestyle magazines, the kind where everything, down to the imported rose petals scattered along the aisle, screamed perfection. And Elias Vance was already bored. He stood near the bar, tuxedo immaculate, expression unreadable, billionaire, tech mogul, eligible bachelor. Life had grown sterile. Deals, deadlines, applause, and endless silence. He swirled the single malt in his glass, eyes scanning the crowd of polished guests, all part of a world that praised success but never noticed the work that actually kept it running. Then he saw her. She wasn't wearing a designer dress or vying for attention. She was moving with focused intensity, directing staff near the dessert table. Her skin glowed in the evening light, a deep, warm mahogany tone, and her dress, a sharply tailored uniform, clung to her with authority. She wasn't playing the game. She was running a business. She was in command. It shook something loose inside him, something his carefully constructed life of control had suppressed. As if sensing his stare, she glanced over, her professional, no-nonsense gaze meeting his hungry one. In that brief moment, so fleeting yet electrifying, he forgot the wealth, the music, the fake laughter around him. He saw her, not as the caterer, but as the woman who belonged at his side, the future CEO of his heart. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story, but he knew one thing with startling clarity. She was about to change every rule he had made. Elias moved before logic could intervene. He crossed the manicured lawn with purpose, weaving through tipsy guests and their meaningless chatter. His entire focus narrowed to one woman. She was repositioning champagne flutes on a serving tray when he reached her. And up close, she was even more captivating. Sharp cheekbones, lips pressed in concentration, eyes that assessed and dismissed him in under 3 seconds. "You're not drinking," he said, voice low and direct. She glanced up, and for a heartbeat, he saw the flicker of recognition. She knew exactly who he was. Then her expression shifted back to professional neutrality. "I'm working," she replied, her tone courteous but firm. "I haven't seen you at these events before," Elias continued, stepping closer. "Are you a friend of the bride, or—" She cut him off with surgical precision, the word "sir" landing like a steel door slamming shut between them. "If you need something from the menu, I can send someone over to assist you." The dismissal should have stung. Instead, it ignited something primal in him. She wasn't impressed. She wasn't interested. She had work to do, and he was an interruption. "What's your name?" he pressed. "Have a wonderful evening, sir." She turned away, signaling to one of her staff members across the tent. He watched her walk away, the sway of her hips purposeful, not performative. Elias Vance, a man who'd built empires and closed billion-dollar deals before breakfast, had just been politely and professionally destroyed by a woman whose name he didn't even know. He needed to know everything about her. An hour later, Elias found her in the back prep area, away from the guests. She was reviewing an invoice with one of her assistants, her finger trailing down columns of numbers with the focus of someone who'd built everything from scratch. He'd asked Garrett, the groom's brother and his closest friend, who she was. Zuri Hayes, owner of Hayes & Co. Catering. Self-made, fiercely independent, and according to Garrett,
completely off limits, which only made Elias want her more. "Zuri," he said, her name tasting like a promise on his tongue. She looked up, and this time there was a flash of irritation in those dark eyes. "Mr. Vance, you really shouldn't be back here. Health code violations. I need your number." She blinked, then laughed. It wasn't a flattered giggle. It was the sharp, knowing laugh of a woman who had heard every line and seen every play. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do." "What you need," Zuri said, setting down her clipboard and turning to face him fully, "is to go back to the reception and let me finish my job. I have 150 guests to feed, a dessert course to coordinate, and exactly zero interest in mixing business with anything else. I'm not asking as a guest. I'm asking as a man who what?" She crossed her arms, and the gesture made her look even more formidable. "Who saw the help and decided she'd make an interesting story to tell at your next board meeting? I've worked too hard to become someone's entertaining anecdote, Mr. Vance." The words hit harder than any business rival's insult ever had, because she wasn't wrong to be suspicious. Men like him usually didn't see women like her as anything more than a novelty. But she wasn't a novelty to him. She was everything he'd been missing, without knowing he'd been searching for it. "That's not what this is," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Then what is it?" He didn't have an answer that would sound insane, so he told her the truth. "I don't know yet, but I need to find out." Zuri studied him for a long moment, and he felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with business acumen or net worth. Then she shook her head. "I don't date clients. I don't date guests of clients. And I definitely don't date men who show up in my workspace making demands. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She walked past him, leaving him standing alone in the prep tent, surrounded by the scent of caramelized sugar and fresh herbs, feeling more alive than he had in years. If you can't stand people who treat hardworking professionals like they're invisible until they want something, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Type "nobody deserves that," because what Elias did next only made things more complicated. Elias Vance didn't give up. He'd built a tech empire by refusing to accept no as a final answer, and he wasn't about to start now. He called Garrett the next morning, got the name of Zuri's company, and within 2 hours had her business address, tax records, and a full profile of Hayes & Co. Catering. She'd started the business 5 years ago with a loan from her grandmother and sheer determination. No investors, no shortcuts, just relentless work and an eye for excellence that had earned her a reputation among the city's elite. She was booked solid for the next 8 months. She employed 12 people. She just signed a lease on a larger commercial kitchen space. She was extraordinary, and she was going to be furious when she saw him. He showed up at her office the next afternoon, walking past the small reception area where a startled assistant looked up from her desk. "I'm here to see Zuri Hayes. Do you have an appointment?" "No." Before the assistant could respond, a door swung open, and there she was. Zuri wore dark jeans and a Hayes & Co. branded polo shirt, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, and her expression shifted from surprise to fury in under a second. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. "I wanted to talk about a business proposition." "Melanie, call security." Zuri didn't take her eyes off Elias. "Wait, you tracked down my office?" She stepped forward, and he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands clenched at her sides. You used your resources and your connections to find out where I work, and then you showed up uninvited because I told you no? I'm not trying to intimidate you. Then what are you trying to do? Zori's voice rose. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a powerful man who's used to getting whatever he wants. And right now, he wants to treat me like I'm some kind of prize he can acquire. That's not flattering, Mr. Vance. That's terrifying. The word hit him like cold water. Terrifying. He'd been so focused on his own feelings, his own need to see her again, that he hadn't considered how his actions looked from her perspective. A billionaire, trashing down a woman who'd explicitly said no, showing up at her workplace, using his power to circumvent her boundaries. He felt sick. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I'll leave." He turned to go, and he almost made it to the door before her voice stopped him. "Wait."
Zuri stood in the middle of her small office, arms still crossed, but something in her expression had shifted. Not softened exactly, but the fury had been replaced by calculation. "If I give you 15 minutes, will you leave me alone after that?" "Yes," Elias said, though the word tasted like a lie. He didn't think he'd ever be able to leave her alone, but he owed her the dignity of choice. "Fine. Coffee. Public place. Tomorrow at 2. And this is a one-time meeting, Mr. Vance. You show up in my office again, and I file a restraining order. Are we clear?" Crystal. The next day, they met at a busy cafe downtown. Zuri arrived exactly on time, sliding into the booth across from him with the wariness of someone entering a negotiation with a known adversary. She ordered black coffee, waited for the server to leave, then pinned him with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Talk," she said. Elias had prepared a speech. He had planned to be charming, persuasive, strategic. Instead, he found himself telling her the truth. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. And I know that sounds like a line. I know men have probably said that to you 1,000 times, but I've never felt this before. You looked at me like I was in your way, like my money and my name meant nothing compared to the work you had to do. And it was the most honest moment I've had in years." Zuri sipped her coffee, expression unreadable. "What do you want from me?" "A chance. Just a chance to know you. No pressure, no expectations, just time." "Time costs money, Mr. Vance, and I don't have a lot of either to waste on men who are going to get bored once the novelty wears off." "I won't." "You don't know that." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You live in a different world than I do. You see me as this—" Zori stood in the middle of her small office, arms still crossed, but something in her expression had shifted. Not softened exactly, but the fury had been replaced by calculation. "If I give you 15 minutes, will you leave me alone after that?" "Yes," Elias said, though the word tasted like a lie. He didn't think he'd ever be able to leave her alone, but he owed her the dignity of choice. "Fine. Coffee, public place, tomorrow at 2. And this is a one-time meeting, Mr. Vance. You show up at my office again, and I file a restraining order. Are we clear?" Crystal.
The next day, they met at a busy cafe downtown. Zuri arrived exactly on time, sliding into the booth across from him with the wariness of someone entering a negotiation with a known adversary. She ordered black coffee, waited for the server to leave, then pinned him with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Talk," she said. Elias had prepared a speech. He'd planned to be charming, persuasive, strategic. Instead, he found himself telling her the truth. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. And I know that sounds like a line. I know men have probably said that to you 1,000 times, but I've never felt this before. You looked at me like I was in your way, like my money and my name meant nothing compared to the work you had to do. And it was the most honest moment I've had in years." Zuri sipped her coffee, expression unreadable. "What do you want from me?" "A chance. Just a chance to know you. No pressure, no expectations, just time." "Time costs money, Mr. Vance, and I don't have a lot of either to waste on men who are going to get bored once the novelty wears off." "I won't." "You don't know that." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You live in a different world than I do. You see me as this intriguing challenge right now. But in 6 months, when your friends start making comments, when you realize that dating the caterer comes with social complications, you'll disappear. And I'll be left with my business reputation in tatters because people will say I slept my way to whatever success I have. That won't happen. You can't promise that." She was right. He couldn't. But he could try. "What if we keep it professional?" he offered. "What if we start as business contacts? I need catering for corporate events. You need clients. We build from there. No personal pressure, and you set the boundaries." Zuri studied him for a long moment. Then she pulled out her business card and slid it across the table. "My terms. You respect my schedule. You don't show up unannounced. You don't use your connections to dig into my life. And the moment I say stop, this ends. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." She stood, gathering her purse. "I'll send you a proposal for your next corporate event. We'll see how it goes from there." She walked out of the cafe, leaving him with her business card and the faintest spark of hope. Over the next 6 weeks, their business relationship developed into something neither of them could deny. Elias hired her company for 3 corporate events, each one a roaring success that earned Zuri glowing reviews and referrals. But it was the meetings between events, the consultations that ran long, the conversations that drifted from menu planning to personal dreams, that changed everything. She told him about growing up in a neighborhood where people worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on, about her grandmother who taught her that dignity came from doing excellent work no matter what the work was. She told him about the first time she'd catered an event for people who had more money than her entire family would see in a lifetime, how she'd felt invisible, until she realized her food made them feel something. "I make people happy," she said one evening, sitting across from him in his downtown office after finalizing details for a tech conference. "I make people happy. That's my power. Not my looks, not my charm, my skill." And Elias told her about the loneliness of success, about building something extraordinary and having no one to share it with who saw him rather than his bank account. He told her about the suffocating expectations, the endless parade of people who wanted something from him, the way he'd stopped trusting anyone's motives years ago. "Until you," he admitted. "You didn't want anything from me. You just wanted me gone, so you could do your job." Zuri laughed, and the sound filled something hollow in his chest. "I still want you gone most of the time. You're extremely inconvenient." "Inconvenient how?" She met his eyes, and the air between them shifted. Charged. Dangerous. You make me want things I promised myself I wouldn't want. You make me forget why I built all these walls in the first place. Elias stood, moving around the desk slowly, giving her time to stop him. She didn't. He knelt beside her chair, close enough to catch the scent of cocoa butter and ambition on her skin. He asked softly, "What if we stopped pretending this is just business?" Then, everything gets complicated. It's already complicated. Zuri's hand lifted, her fingers brushing his jaw with a touch so gentle it felt like surrender. If we do this, if we try this, you have to understand something. I won't be your secret. I won't be hidden away because you're worried about what your world thinks. And I won't give up my business, my independence, or my dignity for anyone. Not even you. I wouldn't ask you to. Then men always say that until they do. Elias caught her hand, pressing it against his chest where his heart hammered. "Then let me prove you wrong." She kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like testing the stability of a bridge before crossing. Then it deepened, became something fierce and claiming, and Elias knew with absolute certainty that he would burn down his entire empire before he let her go.
3 months into their relationship, Elias invited Zuri to a charity gala. It was the kind of event where tech moguls rubbed shoulders with old money, where deals were made over champagne, and where appearances mattered more than authenticity. Zuri had resisted at first, but he'd promised it would be different, that he'd stand beside her, that his world would accept her. He'd been naive. They'd barely arrived when Victoria Hartwell, a rival CEO's wife and notorious social climber, approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Elias, darling." "And who was this?" "Zuri Hayes," Elias said, his hand firm on the small of Zuri's back. "She owns Hayes & Co. Catering." "Oh, the caterer from the Williams wedding. How unsurprising of you to attend as a guest this time. Tell me, dear, are you here scouting potential clients, or has Elias decided to diversify his portfolio?" The insult was wrapped in silk, but it landed like a blade. Zuri's spine straightened, but before she could respond, Victoria continued, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "Though I suppose it makes sense. Men like Elias always have a taste for the exotic. Just don't expect it to last, sweetheart. Women like you are novelties, not fixtures." Elias felt Zuri tense beside him, felt her prepare to walk away from him and everything they'd built. But before she could move, he stepped forward, his voice carrying enough ice to freeze the entire ballroom. "Victoria, let me make something absolutely clear. Zuri isn't exotic. She isn't a novelty. She isn't a phase. She's the woman I'm in love with, and she's built something extraordinary through talent and relentless work, while people like you inherited your relevance. If you ever speak to her that way again, I'll ensure every tech company in this city knows that working with your husband means social poison. Are we clear?" Victoria's face drained of color. She stammered something and fled. Zuri stared at him, her eyes wide. "You just declared war on the Hartwells." "I don't care." "Elias." "I meant what I said. All of it." He turned to her, taking both her hands.
I should have shut that down the moment she opened her mouth. I should have made it clear from the start that you're not some accessory to my life. You're the point of it." Tears shimmered in Zuri's eyes, but she blinked them back. "This world is always going to see me that way. The caterer who got lucky, the black girl who landed the billionaire. Then we change the narrative." Elias pulled her closer. He had something to show her. He led her out of the gala to his car, driving her to Hayes & Co.'s new commercial kitchen. When they arrived, she looked confused until he handed her a folder. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside were contracts, investment documents, and purchase orders. Elias had been quietly funding upgrades to her supply chain, negotiating better rates with premium vendors, and connecting her with clients she'd been trying to reach for years, all in her name, all protected under her business structure. "You've been doing this for months," she whispered, scanning the documents. "I wanted to prove that I respect your grind, not just your beauty, that I see your ambition and want to help you build your empire, not absorb you into mine." Zuri looked up at him, and for the first time since they'd met, her walls were completely down. "Why?" "Because you deserve everything you've worked for, and because I love you enough to make sure you succeed with or without me." She kissed him then, fierce and claiming, and whispered against his mouth, "With you. I choose with you."
6 months later, Elias called Zuri to his office for what she thought was another business consultation. Instead, he presented her with a contract that made her heart stop. Vance Tech's exclusive catering partner for all global events, product launches, and corporate functions for the next 5 years, she read aloud, her voice shaking. "With a guarantee of..." "Elias, this is $15 million. Read the addendum." She flipped to the final page, and there, in clear legal language, was a clause that made her breath catch. "The contract requires the presence of Zuri Hayes as both CEO of Hayes & Co. and as partner to Elias Vance in all personal and professional capacities, pending her acceptance of a formal marriage proposal." Zuri looked up, and Elias was kneeling beside her chair, a ring box in his hand. "You said you wouldn't be my secret. You said you wouldn't give up your business or your independence for anyone. So I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to build with me, to merge our worlds in a way that respects everything you've created. This contract guarantees your business success regardless of our personal relationship, but I'm hoping you'll choose both." "This is insane," she whispered. "Probably. You're leveraging a business deal to propose." "I'm leveraging a business deal to prove I'll never ask you to choose between your success and being with me. You can have both, Zuri. You deserve both." Zuri stared at the contract, then at the man kneeling before her. She thought about every person who'd ever underestimated her. Every time someone had assumed her success was tied to her looks rather than her skill. Every moment she'd been invisible in rooms full of powerful people. Then she thought about Elias, not the billionaire, but the man who'd learned to see her, who'd respected her no when so many others wouldn't have, who'd invested in her dreams without asking for credit, who'd stood in front of his entire world and declared that loving her was the best decision he'd ever made. "The contract has a loophole," she said finally. Elias frowned. "What?" It says, pending acceptance of a formal marriage proposal. It doesn't specify when that acceptance has to occur. Zuri. She smiled, slow and devastating. So I'll accept the business contract immediately because I'm not stupid enough to turn down a deal that will change my company's trajectory forever. But the proposal... She leaned down, her lips brushing his ear. You're going to have to keep asking because I want to make sure you mean it. That you'll still be here when the novelty wears off and I'm just a woman who works too hard and has very little time for romance. Elias caught her face in his hands, and his smile was pure joy. I'll ask you every day until you say yes. That might take a while. I have time. She kissed him then, and it tasted like victory, like a future neither of them had seen coming, but both had been brave enough to fight for. 2 weeks later, she said yes. 3 months after that, they married at the same vineyard where they'd met, in front of every person who'd ever doubted that a caterer and a billionaire could build something real. The food was extraordinary. Hayes & Co.'s reputation soared. And when Zuri walked down the aisle in a dress that cost more than her first year's revenue, but still felt like armor, she saw Elias waiting for her with tears in his eyes. 5 years later, Hayes & Co. was a multinational catering empire. Zuri had expanded into restaurant consulting, published a cookbook, and been featured on the cover of 3 business magazines. Elias had stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Vance Tech to focus on philanthropic ventures alongside his wife. They stood in the same vineyard, celebrating their anniversary, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and amber. Zuri's hand rested on her slightly rounded stomach, evidence of the next adventure they'd chosen together. Still glad you said yes? Elias asked, pulling her close. Zuri smiled, thinking about the terrified caterer who tried so hard to stay invisible, and the powerful woman she'd become when someone saw her worth. Best business decision I ever made. It was personal, not business. Maybe it was both. She kissed him softly. Maybe it was always supposed to be both. And in the distance, the string quartet played the same song that had been playing the night they'd met, when a billionaire looked across a crowded wedding and saw not the help, but his entire future.